Well, good morning. Good morning. And welcome to All People's Church Unitarian Universalist, formerly known as First Jefferson. My name is Mary Kerwin, and I'll be serving as your co-celebrant for worship today. We're so happy to have Mary Ann Clark here again to preach on the subject of minds, souls, and bingo. Such an intriguing title. You might remember that Mary Ann has preached before after having participated in Reverend Annie Furster's sermon writing workshop last spring. For those of you who don't know Mary Ann, she is a recently retired Texas Wesleyan professor of biology. And currently, Mary Ann volunteers tirelessly at church here, serving as our board secretary, and she also helps hold together our worship and choir programs. Thank you, and welcome back to the pulpit, Mary Ann. Before we continue on to our service, there are announcements. And the first is that we're having a church service auction here on Saturday evening, November 12th. And that's less than 5 weeks away, and I think Dan Sexton is going to tell us a little bit more about that. So Dan, if you would come forward, please.
I'm helping coordinate the service auction, and it's going to be Saturday, November 12th at 6:30. And I apologize for the confusion. I think we had November 6th down first, and that was the wrong date. But November 12th is the right one, so write that down in your calendar and block that out now. And we're going to have dinner and drinks, fun and fellowship. And we'll have tickets for sale starting next week. There will be a silent auction of items in the fellowship hall, and there'll be a live auction in the hall here. And we ask folks to consider donating items like our family's done, like for the silent auction, those are things like we've given like a cookbook or a vase we didn't care about anymore. And for the live auction, that's kind of bigger things. Like we've done I think we did a themed dinner party one year for Mardi Gras or something like that. And other folks have done like a little dinner party or a get together pool party, those kind of things. So think about what you can offer. And we've got forms available to fill out your offerings and some examples there to look at. But think about that, and you can ask me if you have any questions. Thank you all.
Hey, and I can tell you too that the quilters are making a quilt for the raffle, and we'll have tickets, raffle tickets available soon for that too. Today is our monthly First Sunday potluck luncheon, immediately following the service in Coleman Hall. Everyone is welcome to stay and join us for potluck, even if you did not bring a dish to share. And I think that's it for the announcements. Please now gather yourselves and enter into a spirit of community and worship with our musical prelude.
Come into this place of peace and let its silence heal your spirit. Come into this place of memory and let its history warm your soul. Come into this place of prophecy and power and let its vision change your heart. Please rise as you're able for the lighting of the chalice, the opening hymn, and our affirmation. Our chalice lighting words are from Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Our opening hymn is number 331, Life is the Greatest Gift of All.
Love is the doctrine of this church.
The quest for truth
is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. And I'll now invite Joe Burnham to come forward for our story for all ages.
And can we have the young and the young at heart up front? Our story this morning is called The Magical Yet. And it was written by, hold on, Angela de Tirolizzi, okay? So there are days when your dreams haven't come true, and you're upset by the things that you can't do. If you've lost or failed or cried just a bit, you're tired of waiting and ready to quit. Like that shiny new bike that you couldn't ride, and it didn't matter how hard you tried. You couldn't pedal and you couldn't steer, and you couldn't get that bike into gear. Then when you thought you were on the right track, you popped a wheelie and fell on your back. And now you won't ride. No way, not ever. No riding for you. You will walk forever. Don't give up now. There's a major game changer, a most amazing thought rearranger, someone to show you how good you can get Now introducing the magical yet. Michael, look up there and you can see the pictures. Look up on the screen over here. Can you see? Okay. Quiet, okay. With this yet's magic, you can begin to see where you're going beyond where you've been. There's so many things that you've learned to do, and when you didn't know, the yet was with you. Like when you babbled before you could talk, or how you crawled before you could walk. Yet a dreamer, a schemer, a hoper, a trier, a maker, a doer, a gotta fly higher. This yet finds a way even when you don't, and yet knows you will when you think you won't. Like that shiny new bike that you couldn't ride, hop right back on with your yet by your side. Yet doesn't mind warm-ups, fixes and flops, do-overs, redos, stumbles and stops. Yet knows there's mistakes, some big and some small, and yet you're sure to get over them all. Play the kazoo or play the bassoon, jam with the yet, and soon you'll be in tune. Try skateboarding tricks like the ollie heel flip. Yes, this can get to the championship. Tongue twisters twisted, your tongue in a knot, yet says keep trying and practice a lot. Be patient, you can't do it all overnight. Some things take days, months, or years to get right. But if you keep leaping, dreaming, wishing, waiting, learning, trying, missing, with yet as your guide along the way, you'll do all the things that you can't do today. Now you're bolder, braver, and starting to see, with yet, you can get just where you want to be. You finally did it, yet knew you could. You're not just riding, you're getting quite good. But don't stop now. You've got so much to do. The good news is this: yet grows with you. So no matter how big or old you may get, you never outgrow, you'll never forget. You can always believe in the magic of yet. Thank you. Come on, let's go. Come on, let's go.
We'll sing the children out. As we leave this friendly place, hope gives light to every face. May the kindness which we learn light our hearts till we return. The offering is a sacrament of the free church. It is supported by the voluntary generosity of all who join with us. The offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation of our shared hopes and values. October marks the start of a new quarter, and that means that we'll be sponsoring a new Share the Plate recipient. And for the fourth quarter of the year, that organization is Raices, which stands for Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services. So please give generously, and the offering will now be received, and will the ushers please come forward?
The song that we're singing this morning is of love and understanding. The words are by Kenneth Paxton, who is a Unitarian minister, and the music was written by Betsy Jo Engelbrandt, who is a friend of Claire Morgan, one of our novelists. And she's also a wonderful Unitarian, written a number of songs in our hymn book, and we sang her songs before as a choir. Of love and understanding. What more have we to give to one another than love and understanding? We will make the world for the gladness of children, and we will gather a store of love for youth. We will find usefulness. We will find useful tasks for their hands, so that they may learn to create with joy. We will gather a store of love for parents. And we will gather a store of love for the aged, those whose days have been wrung with our follies and our hurts. Wisdom must be made the implement of love, and love the guide and repairer of knowledge. What more have we to give? And understanding.
We will find useful tasks for their
Our reading this morning is from Mary Oliver's book, Long Life. M, that Mary Oliver refers to in this, is her lifelong partner, Molly. M and I have plagued each other with our differences for more than 40 years, but it is also a tonic. M will hardly look at a bush. She wants a speedboat. I have to sit down on the sand and look around and get dreamy. I want to see what spirits are peeking out of the faces of the roses. Years ago, M took flying lessons. In the afternoon, I got to stand at the edge of the harbor and watch her stall the small plane over the water. That means you cut the engine and let the plane drop nose first down. Then you start the engine again when the plane is dropping, and you level it, hopefully, and swoop away. Week after week, M came home looking the way I feel when I've seen wild swans. It was terrifying and wonderful. Along with the differences that abide in each of us, there is also in each of us the maverick, the darling stubborn one who won't listen, who insists, who chooses preference or the spirited guess over yardsticks or even history. I suspect this maverick is somewhat what the soul is, or at least that the soul lives close by and companionably with its agitating and inquiring force. And of course, all of it, the differences and the maverick uprisings, are part of the richness of life. If you are too much like myself, what shall I learn of you, or you of me? I bring home sassafras leaves, and M looks and admires. She tells me how it feels to float in the air above the town and the harbor, and my world is sweetened by her description of those blue miles. The touch of our separate excitements is another of the gifts of our life together. Please rise as you are willing and able for the singing of the next hymn, number 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life.
We honor our time together with the shared stories and news from the congregation. Each week there's a journal outside the entrance to the sanctuary where you can write a message of memory or hope. Also, at any time during our service, you are welcome to come forward and light a candle in our meditation center here at the side of the chancel. We focus our thoughts today on the many people in the world who face floods, drought, fires, and war. We turn our thoughts as well as to those seeking refuge in another country, to those who are burdened by sickness, hunger, and pain, by sorrow and anxiety, violence and loss. We pause this morning to share our care for these people and also for those closer to home about whom we are concerned. From our book of memory and hope, we have several items. One is that the East Side Soup Drive, as of last week, got 154 cans of soup for East Side Ministries. So that's a great result. And we also would like to express a huge thank you to Tony Collins, who is here with us today, for fixing the office door. Thank you, Tony. May the warmth of this community extend to all who are rejoicing or hurting in our wider world. The stories that live in this community are cherished, even when they are not shared, as we keep one another in mind during the week ahead. Our meditation is a reading, and Mary Ann and I are going to present this.
We need one another. Oops. We're going to start.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted.
We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid.
We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again.
We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone.
We need one another in the hour of success, when we look for someone to share our triumphs.
We need one another in the hour of defeat, when with encouragement we might endure and stand again.
We need one another when we come to die, and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey.
All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us. Please take 1 minute for silent meditation before the musical interlude. Don't you just love Misha? I do. What is a soul? I'm a science geek, and I've been slowly drifting away from conventional religion for several decades now. As a science geek, I more or less conflate my soul with my mind, or if you like, my brain. I have no specific training in neurosciences, but I have believed since I was a graduate student that even though my brain, as an anatomical structure, is located in my head, as a functioning organ, it must extend well past it. So many activities seem to be in other parts in my body, especially in my hands and feet. Typing, for example, or driving, or playing the piano. Those operations don't just happen in my head. They wander down my spinal cord into my hands or feet and back up again. It makes sense for it to be so dispersed. In vertebrate embryos, the central nervous system begins as part of the dorsal ectoderm, the sort of exterior skin of the developing embryo. And it folds and sinks under the surface of the adjacent skin. The anterior part of the resultant tube becomes the brain, and the posterior part becomes the spinal cord. But it's a continuous mass of tissue that is subdivided into a number of regions with different jobs. It's all neural tissue, and it all contributes to your brain or your mind function. Your eyes, by the way, grow out from your brain after it sinks under the skin surface. So there's every reason to believe that when you're looking into someone's eyes, you are, in fact, looking directly into their brain or into their mind, or if you like, into their soul. But wait, there's more. Recently, I read something about our minds being not just in our bodies, but extending past them. This was a discussion in a Science News story about a book written way back in 2016 by Dan Siegel, who is a professor of psychiatry at the UCLA School of Medicine. The name of the book is Mind, A Journey to the Heart of Being Human. Yes, I read the book, and no, I'm not going to give you a book report, but I was interested in Siegel's definition of what a mind is, because to a science geek, he is also defining a soul. The definition emerged about 40 years ago at a meeting, a cross-disciplinary meeting of physicists, neurobiologists, and social scientists whose goal was to define the mind in a way that would be comprehensible to people in all of these disciplines. Minds apparently had never really been defined beyond the general idea that minds are what brains do. Nobody wants to admit to anything more specific because they were afraid that doing so would then limit their further thought and research. They were afraid that having a definition of a mind could close their minds. But what they finally came up with was this. Hold on to your hats here. The mind is the emergent, self-organizing process, both embodied and relational, that regulates energy and information flow within and among us. There's a lot of words in there. Emergent, self-organizing, embodied, relational, energy, information. The mind is the emergent, self-organizing process, both embodied and relational, that regulates energy and information flow within and among us. But although it's a very wordy definition, and students might even throw things at me, it's sort of reasonable. And if you unpack it a little, it has both personal and social implications. Emergent means that it develops gradually over time. And self-organizing means that there's a lot of complex neural interactions that contribute to the development and operation of your mind. and hence your mind, and if you like your soul, is always changing. Embodied means that it's housed in your body. Your mind has an address. Your mind is in your body and you carry it around with you. Relational means that your mind is partly shaped by your social interactions with your family, your friends, and all of your other contacts. The social aspect of mind development emerges because the basic functional unit of our minds, neurons, are really good at doing something that all our cells do, even if you're a slime mold. They communicate. They collect and process and transmit information. And doing that takes a lot of energy. That's the energy and information flow part of that definition. The mind is the emergent self-organizing process, both embodied and relational, that regulates energy and information flow within and among us. Our neurons don't just communicate with our other neurons, but with the neurons of other people. Within the nervous system, most of that is done with chemicals, neurotransmitters. One neuron releases a signaling molecule, a neurotransmitter, that binds to the surface of another neuron, which causes changes in the electrical properties across the membrane, and waves of ions flow across the membrane, which may in turn lead to the release of another signaling molecule to an adjacent neuron. So that's how the signal goes from one neuron to another. Between persons, some of that interneural communication is also with chemicals like pheromones, but I think for us a lot of it is audiovisual as well. We connect our minds, perhaps our souls, when we talk to one another or even just look at one another. In your eyes and your ears, light and sound are converted to electrochemical signals that run from cell to cell. Even just moving into the visual range of another person communicates something. In the passage from Mary Oliver, she talks about how she and her partner, Molly, are different from each other. They respond to their environments in different ways, and they share those responses, even though they may not have shared immediately the experiences that produced those responses. Mary finds wonder in nature, while Molly finds it in physical challenge. They share that wonder with each other. It's interesting thing, the really interesting thing these days is how many ways that soul-to-soul communication is delivered. There's direct communication that involves two people in closed physical space. There's group communication, like me talking to you all right now. And this is also spread out more in time because I wrote most of this a while back, but you're just hearing it now. And there's communication by telephone, which is fairly immediate, although we might be physically separated, and these days can even include pictures. There's email, when a message can leave the sender way before the reader looks at it. And all those social media like Facebook and Twitter, and finally one of the oldest social media for humans, writing on a piece of paper and delivering the message by slipping it under the door or printing it in a book that may not get read by anybody for hundreds of years. All of that is communication, and all of it interacts with our minds and reshapes them. Each of us has a different communication network, shaping our individual souls. A few months ago, we had a guest in the pulpit, John Beckett. He was using a tarot deck as an analogy for choosing a role in the practice of social justice in interesting times. Y'all remember that sermon? His analogy reminded me of a recent social experience, a bingo game, at a Texas Wesleyan fundraiser. It was a typical mixer activity. Each bingo card had 24 descriptions of a person, and you had to find somebody in the group that matched each one of the descriptions on the card. For example, speaks another language, owns a cat, has played football, and so forth. Whoever filled up their card first won the game. However, each person could contribute only one square to somebody else's card. So you couldn't just get together with 2 or 3 close friends to fill up your card. You had to talk to at least 24 other people. I met several of the criteria myself. I own a dog. I've lived on 3 continents. I've ridden a horse. And I have a younger brother. As I circulated around the room, filling a square here and there for a number of people and from a number of people, I wasn't thinking about much except getting my card filled up. I didn't win the game, by the way. But later I saw it as a good analogy for something else, soul modification by social bingo. Each of us is marked not only with our own individual experience, but with our interactions with others. I had spread myself out over 24 different bingo cards, serving a different role in each. So the content of your soul is kind of like one of those bingo cards because you have been written on by so many different people. But your bingo card isn't limited to 24 squares. It keeps growing at the edges. And those edges are extending mental axons and dendrites in all directions. Recently, my bingo card was expanded by a colleague who was telling me about Heather Cox Richardson, a political historian at Boston College. She writes a blog called Letters from an American. How many of you already read that? Oh, good. Look it up. My colleague mentioned her because I had told him that I had nearly stopped watching the news because I found it so depressing. He told me that I needed to stay connected to what's going on. Not watching unpleasant news is like avoiding difficult areas of conversation, and both of those are like amputating part of your soul, shutting down access to interaction and growth. So he sent me an email with a link to Letters from an American, and I just really loved the whole mixed connectivity of this event. It started with a regular conversation, person to person, which progressed to an email, which progressed to a link, and me clicking on the link and reading stuff from Heather Cox Richardson, somebody I have never met and probably never will, but she will probably contribute to the reshaping of my soul. Because we have been shaped by our interactions with so many people. Each of these people probably sees a different me, and none of them is totally right. So that when we feel that somebody doesn't get us, they probably don't, and we probably shouldn't expect them to, without extended social interaction to produce more areas of interaction in our respective intersection on our respective bingo cards. Something else contributes to our soul complexity. We don't communicate using telepathy, we use language. There are about 7,000 human languages, and each of those languages parses the world in a slightly different way. Last year, here at church, I started to learn Spanish. Thank you, Anna in Virginia. And doing that is also changing my mind. If I ever get fluent in Spanish, I may even have one soul in English and another in Spanish, the two overlapping like a Venn diagram. But recently, it struck me that you don't have to change languages to describe or interpret common experiences in different ways. For example, the events in the Capitol on January 6th. Is that an invasion or a tour? Is that an insurrection or legitimate political discourse? What? That doesn't seem to be possible. Those terms seem to describe wildly different experiences. Are we using the same language? Maybe not. Somehow we have individualized even languages that we hold in common, so that to truly understand and interact productively with one another, we need translators. Maybe places like this church can help us begin to translate for one another. We offer a spiritual home here at APC for people who are seeking what we offer, which is room for spiritual exploration and growth. Connecting to other people requires that we try to experience their reality. Their reality. There are some realities we might prefer not to experience. But in having these difficult conversations that we talk about, we may have to step into these unpleasant realities. When we share another's reality, our own mental complexity is increased and our souls grow. In his book, The Bonobo and the Atheist, primatologist Frans de Waal comments on the observation that people who go to church have stronger immune systems than people who don't. He says, maybe it's not the religiosity that protects against diseases, but human contact. Churches produce more shared commitment, which adds to a sense of belonging. And that sense of belonging helps us to form a common soul fund, which we can all then benefit. So maybe it's not the church that's helping to grow your soul, but the people that you interact with here. So your mind and your soul are yours, to be sure, but its nurturing and development and expansion includes multiple social interactions. My brain, my mind, my soul not only goes far beyond my own body, but is so entangled with everybody else's, both in place and in time, that it's a little hard to say where I begin and where I end. It's not that I'm you and that you are me. We're not. Each of us has a home base, but from that home base we are inextricably linked. And those linkages need to be diverse and carefully tended so that part of your soul doesn't wither and die. Please stand as you are able for our closing hymn, number 124, Be That Guide. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The benediction comes from Romans 12. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. Our service is ended. Please join us in Coleman Hall for potluck, conversation, and soul building.